What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Correlation Nation, where today we're going to be breaking down UFC Fight Night Burns versus Morales. And yeah, I mean, it's basically, we're literally, at least in my time zone, 3 minutes away from fight day. I mean, it's here. But nonetheless, we're going to break this card down fight by fight and do our best to get them right. Okay? So the way we're going to handle this is we are going to go from the bottom of the card up to the top. We got a 12 fight card, and I'm going to be quite honest with you guys right off the get. There's some really tough fights to pick here. You know, there's a lot of times I feel way more confident one way or another, but to be honest, I haven't even really picked favorites or sides or nothing. You know, we're just going to go through it. We're going to break it down. I already have all my notes, and we're going to try to figure out who we think is going to win these fights. So, how they're going to play out. So, the first fight we have is Luana Pinheiro versus Tisha Pennington. And this is a pretty solid fight. The thing that I want to do is I want to bring up their notes. And let's see, I might actually have these on the front. And unfortunately I don't. So what we're going to do is click on here, and I don't know why I did that. Alright, so we're going to be looking for Pennington, and I'm pretty sure, I mean, she's been Pennington for a while, so we'll just put Pin, and it should bring it up. Could have put Tisha, I suppose. But there she is. So, with Tisha, we have that she's a light-footed striker. It's kind of like a Muay Thai kickboxing style. She is fast, has pretty good footwork, so she evades a lot of, you know, damage coming back at her because she moves back quite a bit. She has a heavy kicking attack, so she is like primarily a kicker. Not to say she doesn't throw hands or mix in, you know, a little bit of grappling or whatever. It's MMA. But you're going to find that she has a very heavy kicking attack. She does carry her hands a bit low and usually throws punches and flurries. And when she does that, she lunges, you know, which anytime you lunge, or it's kind of like throwing a naked sidekick, you know, you're kind of there just to be countered. So I have this. She has insane balance. She does have pretty good balance. She sprawls well, has good entries on takedowns, but lacks control. So, you know, she is a solid fighter. You know, she, like I said, her speed alone and just she's kind of a squirrely fighter. But nonetheless, we're going to go over to our other girl, Luana, and see what notes we have on her. Ooh, let's pull this up. So, I wish this could be a lot easier. This is, I mean, what is this? What is this, y'all? Let's see, fighter. It's, okay. Luana. And Luana's right here. Let's see what we have on her. This is one of the fights I do actually have a bit of a lean on. She's a light-footed pressure striker, has a solid left jab, but tends to throw heavy, wide punches. One of a negative is she can be a bit reckless. She does have pretty good speed, really nice judo throw that she uses in close. So whenever her opponent comes in close, she'll just kind of grab him by the head and just judo toss him right over her hip. And then she has good ground and pound and solid submission attempts. So I remember breaking this fight down, or, you know, taping both of these fighters, and I'm not sure who the favorite is. I would assume that it's probably Tisha, but the way I see this fight playing out is because Tisha operates better at range. I think that Luana, even though is probably not quite as technical, I think that her pressure is gonna, like, she'll be able to crowd her, and possibly, I don't know if she'll get a finish, but I could see her just like outpacing her, and doing a little bit more damage because she's not allowing Tisha to have the space that her style requires to, look good in the judge's eyes, if that makes sense. So I do think that Luana Pinheiro could win this. This isn't, so she's a plus 300. I don't know if that's super accurate, but that's what it is here on Tapology. Let's look at some of their lost against Jillian Robertson, no shame in that. Angela Hill, kind of the same thing. Guillotine, I guess, is Amanda Ribas. Beat Michelle Watterson. I don't know. I mean, it's women's MMA, so beat Sam Hughes. I think she's probably this huge underdog just because, I mean, Tisha is a pretty good fighter in her own right, but just because she's lost these fights doesn't mean she's terrible. Like I said, she's not a super technical striker, but Jillian, she's gonna take you down. She's gonna control you. So yeah, I'm not sure. And honestly, the Ribas fight, I may not be 100% on this, but I do feel like she might have been winning that fight before getting knocked out. At least it was a competitive fight, I think. Maybe not. Maybe I'm wrong. But anyways, I'm going to take Luana Pinheiro, and let's pull up Tisha real quick and see, because I don't know that she's ever been finished. Nope, never been finished. So yeah, I just think this probably goes to the cards, and she just wins by outpacing her, honestly. I mean, kind of dictating where the fight goes, so it's just like the optics of it. She's in her face, she's winning moments, and not really allowing Tisha to operate at space. I think that Luana can win this fight. Anyways, we're going to move on to the next fight, and we have Hyun Sung Park. I don't know if that's right. Hyun Sung Park. Whatever. I'm sure I'm butchering that, but he's going against Carlos Hernandez. I think this is a tough fight to call. Park is a slight favorite. Hernandez, the slight underdog at plus 155. And let's pull up our notes on these guys, see what we have. I'm not even going to risk going out of that. We're just gonna. All right, so Park, we have he's a plodding striker. He has a nice left jab, kind of spans it though. He does throw quite a bit. So that could always just become predictable if you throw it too often, especially you get in the UFC. These guys are going to be able to pick up on that a lot better than the amateurs or the lower promotion fighters will. But he has a heavy low kick, typically the right one. Looks strong in the clinch and has good knees. He can be taken down, but scrambles well and works to get up. Has solid ground and pound. So let's pull up Carlos and try to get an idea of how these guys match up. So here we have Carlos Hernandez. He's a light-footed striker, has good footwork, usually he uses a lot of lateral movement. You'll see him just kind of skirting around the side of the cage or outside of it. Or you know what I mean. He has solid boxing, but his timing on pocket entries seems a bit off. So like he kind of enters the pocket, and at least from the tape I seen, it always seemed like it was just bad timing, because as soon as you would enter it, he was like getting hit or taken down. But he does fight at a high pace. He has good speed. Has a nice switch knee. His takedown defense isn't very well, but he does scramble well. So let's pull up their... Park hasn't lost, but he hasn't fought like super high level at this point. Shannon Ross. Yeah, I mean, he knocked him out, but Ross can't seem to take a punch anymore. I don't know if he ever could. Carlos Hernandez. Only been knocked out once. Who was it by? Tatsu Taira. Yeah, this is a tough one to call, you know what I mean? Obviously, Carlos is splitting, you know, half wins, half losses in the UFC. Tyra's a really good fighter, and we know that. This gentleman here, I'm not even sure who it is. Okay, he's young. He's pretty good too. Another Japanese fighter. He was just kind of fed to the... That was the marketing machine. I think he just ran through the marketing machine on those fights. Nascimento, he's a pretty solid fighter. That, you know, him with a win over Victor Altamirano. I mean, Altamirano's not the most... I wouldn't say he's like the most skilled fighter, but he's very tenacious. He's a very like well-rounded guy. He's like a jack of all trades. He's a solid fighter. Daniel Alvarez, kind of the same thing, you know, him pulling that win out that's a pretty good win there, in my opinion. I don't think Daniel Barrez is a world beater, but I think he's solid. He's got some pretty clean striking, decent power, good speed. You know, he's a plus athlete. You know, so I think just him being, you know, just a very like fighting at a high pace, can win a lot of these fights. I did notice at the face-offs that Park looked reasonably bigger, and that could definitely come into play here. So I'm just not sure. Light-footed striker, has good footwork. Let's pull up our other dude real quick, just one more time. I want to look at this. I want to look at the notes on him one more time and see. Alright. Plodding striker, has good left jab, kind of spams it, heavy low kick, looks strong on the clinch, and has good knees. Park looks pretty legit. I just think it's going to be a good scrap, and it's really, really tough to pick. You know, we still got a lot to learn about Park. So I'm gonna take Hernandez by decision. I think that, you know, with his fighting style and ability to get back up, I think that he can just kind of outpace Park 2 of the 3 rounds. I mean, if you can play a spread, I mean, you could probably play the spread on, let's see, for Hernandez as the underdog. I think Hernandez was the underdog. So that means you could probably just play the spread on Hernandez. Slight underdog. I don't know what you get that at. But, you know, the thing that scares me here is just that, like I said, Park was definitely bigger. He looked bigger at the face-off, so that's a little bit concerning to me. But I just think Carlos has good enough footwork. He'll be able to move around and avoid him. You know, kind of just pick at him a little bit. Should be a good scrap, though. I think it'll be a very competitive fight. I'm just going to side with Hernandez just based off the fighting styles. And that's where I'm at. Let's move on to Denise Gomez and Elise Reed. This is pretty cut and dry. I think that, you know, we'll just pull it up nonetheless. We might as well. I do the notes. And you never know, there could always be something you just kind of miss out on. Alright, Denise. Okie dokie. She might be a little overrated. I know that she has good power, but when I watched her film, I wasn't overly impressed. She is a power puncher. Solid boxing, throws mostly wide punches, though. She's at, like, take one to give one style. Good chin or recovery. You know, I have seen her crack, but she recovers pretty well. She'll fight through it, so she does have a good will to fight. That can go a long way. Sits on her punches. I mean, yeah, if you're throwing everything wide, you're probably throwing with heat. You know, especially for that women's division. She punches hard. She will pounce on her opponent. Okay. Now with Reed, let's see if we ended up with anything. I don't know. Some of these it was kind of hard to find everything I was looking for. She's a flat-footed pressure striker, average speed, decent kicks, decent boxing, willing grappler that can get caught in transitions. So I don't know. Let's pull up the record. I just think that Gomez is going to just find her at some point and just... She's a huge favorite, though. She's only been knocked out twice. Sam Hughes, TKO'd her with elbows. Where was the other knockout? Ground and pound. Yeah. I just think she can catch her. You know, it only takes one from this girl. She does have some legit power for this division, as I mentioned. And she'll trade, so, you know, she might be able to bait her in by just kind of being in the pocket, getting Elise to, you know, play along with the boxing and try to catch her. But huge favorite. And let's pull up Yeah. I think Denise's gonna win this, and we'll just call it a KO. But you know, I don't know if I would bet that or whatever. That's just what that's what I think the outcome of the fight will be. But I'm not like extremely confident that. I just think that's her. I think that's her path because honestly, Reed might be a little bit of a better, like more technical striker, which she doesn't have amazingly well footwork, and she's not going to just like dance around and pick her apart. But if she survives the punches, then there's a world where she could win. Anyways, we're going to move on. Next fight, we have Luana Santos going against Tanara Lisboa. And we are looking at a pick'em fight, basically minus 130 to a plus 110. This is another tough fight. We'll pull up Luana. Boy, there's a lot of tough fights on this card. All right, Luana. All right, here we are. Here she is. Luana Santos is a light-footed striker. Has average speed at best. Her hand speed's not very fast. She has a decent low kick. All her punches are wide. I mean, like almost all of them, and they're pretty heavy. She does hit pretty good, but she's very hittable. She has a solid judo throw, but it's a bit slow. I remember watching this, and I've seen it time and time again. Her judo's slow. It's like there's not a lot of explosion behind it. It's not like a quick twitch movement. It's like she's using a lot of strength, and it just looks slow. And what I noticed that is there's a lot of times where her opponent actually has an opportunity to take her back. And so when you get to the higher levels, I could certainly see some of these better grapplers capitalizing on this fact and potentially just taking her back and putting her in a bad spot. But she does have she's a solid transitional grappler with submission upside. I think that she probably will lose a fight standing on the feet with Lisboa, in my opinion. And we have a lot of questions about Lisboa's ground game, especially at the UFC level. I mean, she's more of a striker. She's shown, I don't know why it's doing this. She has shown some ability to grapple a bit, but it's at a much lower level of competition. So anyway, she's a light-footed Muay Thai like kickboxer, and when I say that, please forgive me because I'm not that well versed in like the technicality of like the verbiage of these techniques or whatever. But when I say that, she's more of a Muay Thai fighter that is like, she's gonna punch, throw a kick, and then maybe a knee. She's not really gonna get you in the Muay Thai clinch much. She's not really gonna operate that way. She's more of a kickboxer, Muay Thai style. Now, she does have solid speed. She strings together combinations pretty well. She's hittable, but shown good durability in her career. Again, I want to reiterate and mention that, some of this is at a lower level, but she did fight, the Muay Thai or kickboxing at a pretty high level, and so she's shown pretty good durability in that as well. It's more the ground game that I'm a little more uncertain of, just because of who it's come against. But anyway, she has some takedown and grappling ability against low-level competition, as I've already mentioned. So, we have a lot to learn about this girl. she's a little bit older, so it's kind of now or never for her. I don't think she's ever really going to, like, be a top contender or whatever. I don't think she's that good. I mean, even being that she comes from a striking background, I don't think that her striking's, like, necessarily, like, great, but I do see it's more technical and more effective than Luana's. But Luana definitely has the power advantage, in my opinion, at least from what I've seen. So, yeah, this is another one. It's a hard fight to pick. Who's going to be able to implement their game plan? Is Luana going to be able to take down Lisboa? And if she can, does Lisboa's ground game good enough to potentially capitalize on this fact that, she's going to leave this window open for her to take the bag? For me, it's a kind of wait and see. I think I'm going to side with... I don't know. Give me a minute. Let's look at this. Let's look at their recent records, who they fought, and how those fights have turned out. I mean, her losing to Casey O'Neill to me is not a great look. Honestly, Casey O'Neill, in my opinion, is not very good. She's very hittable. She doesn't react well at all when she gets hit. But it's just one loss. She is pretty young. It's tough. Let's look at Lisboa. What's Lisboa's actually ranked higher? She's only had, one fight in the UFC, right? Oh no, I'm tripping. She's had two. Fought Norma Dumont. Got submitted in the first. That's all the way back in 2016. She has a lot of off years here. Win distance with Valentina Shevchenko twice in Muay Thai and kickboxing. I guess she done both. They both done both. So. It's really rough. It's really rough. It's hard to choose. How many times has she gone to decision? And twice. I don't know, guys. This is a tough one. Please help me. I need help on this. Who's it gonna be? Who's it gonna be? I don't know. I'm not confident. I think they're both extremely green MMA fighters in separate areas. Santos's striking is super green, not technical, very it's a tough one to call, fellas. I think you just stay away from it. I don't know. If you got a really, really strong lean on this fight, let me know who it is. I want to know who the heck's supposed to win this fight, because for the life of me, I can't even bring myself to making a decision. How do you pick either of these girls to win a fight? I really, really need to understand. Let's see the age. Santos is young, 25 years old. Lisboa's up there a little bit higher, 34. It's a 9-year age gap. Boy, this is tough, and I just don't know what to do. So we're gonna. Well, Santos has never been finished. Not to say she can't be finished, but this girl's 1-1 to the finish, so I don't know that she's dealt with a ton of adversity. I guess she went distance with Oliveira. More of a striker, so being able to just kind of outpace her. We're gonna lean with Santos. She's got the age advantage. She's definitely got, in my opinion, probably like the strength and grappling advantage. And like I said, we really don't know how well this girl's grappling is gonna hold up against her. But as I already mentioned, I do not feel confident in this at all. I think this is a tough fight to call. And it's more about where they at in their careers. It's the unknowns. It's the uncertainty of, how well is her grappling actually at the UFC level, and whether she can defend. Because honestly, I do think that she has a striking edge, but we've seen other girls have the striking edge on Santos before, and she's just gonna kind of, walk into the fire, I think, and grab her by her head and try to judo throw her onto the mat. And we're just going to see whether she's able to do that or not. If Lisboa used more footwork, like Natalia Silva, I mean, I'm not trying to compare them, but, when you use the footwork and use range or distance management, then yeah, I'd probably favor her because I think that she's the better striker, but she just kind of walks into it as well. So I definitely think that Santos is going to have the grappling edge, and I see her probably getting this win. Tough one to call. Let's move on. We don't need to waste no more time on this. We got Connor Matthews going against Yadier Del Val. I don't know how to pronounce his name. I don't think that's right, and I'm not trying to mess his name up. Devaye, I think, is actually maybe something like that's how it's pronounced. Anyways, Connor Matthews, we'll pull up his fight history, and then we're going to go to our notes. Matthews. All right, here we are. I think this is a tough one too, honestly. I think, Matthews is a light-footed pressure striker. He has good speed. He counters well. He can be overzealous. I do believe that he has a false sense of his skills, because I don't think that he was really ever truly tested before getting to the UFC, at least not enough, so I do think that he came into the UFC thinking that he was gonna walk through people in the UFC like he was in the promotion he was in previously or before getting to the UFC, and that's just not the case. These guys are able to take a lot more of the punishment, so they didn't just fall over when he hit him. He does have solid ground and pound, a good back take, and rear naked choke series. I think that's how he's winning a lot of his fights on the regional. So again, it's a little unproven, but it did prove to be effective for him at the lower level. And I think that he's better than what his current record shows. I think that part of his downfall was that he didn't really deal with adversity before getting to the UFC, and now he's had a chance to do that a little bit. But nonetheless, we're going to dig into this a little bit more. I'm just kind of saying my 2 cents on what I think about Matthews. He looks to be a pretty good athlete, and he has some real skills. And then we have, what's this gentleman's name? How do I spell it? Alright, it's going to bring it up down here, yeah. Yadier. Yadier. Alright. Yadier. Alright. He's flat-footed pressure striker. Explosive. Solid boxing. Brawls in the pocket. He has heavy kicks. Has some wrestling and grappling ability. Some solid ground and pound. He has good output, but he slows. He fades later in the fight. All in all, he looks like a pretty solid fighter. Now let's pull up their current records. So this is Connor Matthews, and he did fight Jose Delgado, and he looks to be a pretty legit contender. I know that he's relatively he's unproven at the UFC level as well, but I think he's a prospect to be looking out for. And then he got knocked out by Dennis Bazooka, and while Dennis is maybe not the greatest fighter in the world or whatever, he is got relatively good boxing. That was in the third round. I'd have to watch that fight back. I don't actually remember the fight specifically. And then he lost a decision to Francis Marshall. And Francis Marshall is also a pretty good fighter. So, Jay Ellis. Did Jay Ellis fight in the UFC? Or am I tripping? That dude, no, he didn't fight in the UFC. There ain't no way. That dude has so many losses. He would have never made it in the UFC. Yeah, so I think, maybe our boy here has skills, but maybe he doesn't have the best chin. So we definitely got to question his ability to take a punch. Being knocked out a few times, and when he was an amateur, which has been quite some time ago, 2019 and 2011, that's 8 years. But, knocked out twice in the first round. Let's see how many knockouts. Like I said, I know this guy, he's pretty explosive. Undefeated. He's fought the much better level of competition. I think he fought in Fury. Beat the likes of... Who was it? Oh, Michael Aswell. He's a solid fighter. Doesn't have a lot of knockouts. I mean, I guess these are smaller. A lighter weight class. Who'd he knock out? I'd kind of like to get rid of that. Hold on. Let's see. Who did this guy knock out? Ground and pound. To a guy that never fought before. And then knocked out Miguel Lugo. Combat Americas, I think that is. I'm not sure how good of a fighter he actually is, but has this is his first fight in the actual UFC. And Antonio Montero. Looked to be a reasonably good fighter. I think that was a pretty good fight. Very competitive. Him coming out on top in that one is pretty impressive. And like I said, I do think that he's dealt with more adversity. I think he's dealt with the higher level of competition. And while Conor has pretty good skill set, his ability to take a punch is maybe not great. Let's see. Oh, he's a heavy favorite too. I don't know that he should be a minus 420 favorite though. He doesn't have a ton of knockouts. And Conor's biggest downfall is going to be him getting knocked out. If he can survive the first round, he probably has a legitimate chance to survive the fight. And even, you know what I mean? Like I said, he's got legit skills. Let's pull up our notes on Conor one more time. Yadier, with him fading later in the fights is not going to help him any. Flat-footed pressure striker, is explosive, solid boxing, brawls in the pocket, heavy kicks, has some wrestling and grappling ability, solid ground and pound, good output but slows. And then you got old Matthews trying to get his, I think he's shaved, man. I think his chin, he should have grew his beard longer. If you feel me, should have. Oh, Matthews, I hope you don't just fall over, brother. Light-footed pressure striker, has good speed, counters well, can be overzealous, false sense of skills, solid ground and pound, and a good back take, rear naked choke series. Yeah, I mean, I think Yadier is the rightful favorite, honestly. Conor, unless Conor, comes out with just a completely different game plan, which is very possible. He very well could. 2 straight losses. Job is absolutely on the line here. They are not going to keep this guy around if he cannot win this fight. 32 years old. Like I said, I think he's got real skills. Yeah, I mean, I think, like I said, I think Yadier is probably the rightful favorite, but there's no value in that. And I'd have to look at the lines to see if I could come up with anything that made sense. I just don't know. Anyways, y'all let me know what you think. I'm not really sure. Like I said it right away. There's a lot of tough fights on this. I'm going to go with Yadier Daval. And we'll see. We'll see what happens in this fight. We'll see if their styles are, the way I'm seeing it right now is, if Conor is going to come out with a similar game plan as he has in the past and just be kind of an aggressive striker, come into the pocket, where Yadier can just kind of brawl. He's proven to be the more durable fighter, and he's fought the higher level of competition. So, at this point, I just don't really have any good reason to trust Matthews, even though I think he does have a pretty good skill set. He's done nothing to show me that I can trust him, whereas Daval has. So, and otherwise, I think skill for skill, it's a pretty good fight. It's really just going to come down to what the odds are and Conor's ability to take some of this damage. So we'll see what happens. later tonight, and we're going to move on to the next fight. The next fight we have Jared Flash Gordon going against Thiago Moises. And let's go ahead and hop right into it. Jared Gordon is nowhere to be found. Oh, maybe it was the space. There he is. There was a space on there. Flat-footed pressure striker, solid boxing, uses low kicks and straight left at range. Enters pocket with a straight left and an overhand right, and then a left hook. So he does tend to throw this three-punch combination quite a bit when he enters the pocket. Utilizes an effective high guard. I say it's effective, but, you know, this dude has been knocked out a decent amount of times, so his takedown defense looks relatively solid. You know what it looked like? He had a strong base, and when somebody tried to take him down, he was able to kind of end up on top. Like, I don't know, kind of muscle him over and end up on top. I don't know if he's going to do that to Moises. And he does have some takedown ability, but lacks top control. And I don't really see a world where he's going to want to be on the mat with Moises. I think that Moises is going to be the much superior grappler. So, yeah, I just don't think that's the smartest game plan. But we shall see. We shall see. Thiago is a light-footed striker. Solid boxing. He has a solid front kick at range. Tends to be more of a counter striker. He does plant his feet when he throws, which, if you haven't heard it before, leaves you open for counters. You know, when you really plant your feet, you're just kind of there to be hit. He's a good offensive grappler and a solid defensive grappler. And the reason I put that is because as good as he is at grappling, he can be submitted. His defensive grappling is not quite at the same level as his offensive grappling. You know, and I know maybe we look at it as all as in one, but I think that's important that, you know, when you got a guy of his, you know, skill set, it's you don't want to miss the fact that this guy can get submissions at a pretty high rate. But if he's going against somebody that's at the level or even a greater level of grappler than he is himself, he's very likely, or no, I shouldn't say likely, but it's very possible that he can be submitted. Okay. So, light-footed striker, solid boxing. Let's see. Let's pull up the records. It's always so hard. Oh, no. There it goes. I think I got another one here somewhere. Let me see. I'm going to have to pull this up. Give me 1 minute. I'm going to have to pull up the fights because this is going to be... I guess we got Muana. Let's just go back. Maybe we'll be alright. Ooh, we got lucky. Alright. See, Jared Gordon's been KO'd 4 times. Only been submitted once. Grant Dawson's the one that submitted him. Let's see what kind of... Yeah, I mean, I think it's... For me, it's just gonna be Thiago. I'm not really sure. It's near even. That's what this says. I'm trying to... In my head, I'm trying to see how these guys match up. How this fight's gonna play out. It's just so hard. Let's see. That's not working. Yeah. I mean, I could see a world where Jared Gordon just kind of wins minutes, because he is pretty active, fights at a pretty good pace, whereas Thiago is probably going to be more of a moment winner. But, you know, Gordon's been submitted before and he's been knocked out before. I don't think Gordon's gonna... I don't think he's gonna knock out Moises. Pull it up one more time. Flat-footed. Pressure striker. Solid boxing. Uses low kicks and straight left at range. Enters pocket with straight left. Overhand right. And left hook. Utilizes an effective high guard. Good volume. And then when we go back over here, we have... See how many finishes he has? 7 knockouts, but at what level? He only has 2 submissions. Let's see his last. So he beat Mark Madison, which was old and more of just a wrestler. Yeah, really not knocking anyone out at the UFC level. Yeah, I just don't see that. I don't think that's the way it's going to work or the way it's going to play out. You know, I think Moises wins the fight. And let's see, what have you done for me lately, Moises? I think he's a better fighter. The pace is what scares me. Yeah. We're taking Moises. It's near pick'em fight. I just think Moises wins this fight. Let me know what you think. I think that, trying to pick a method on this is just way too more difficult because he could really win in any way. He can win by knockout, he can win by submission, he can win by decision, and then the only way I think Gordon wins this is if he's just able to outpace him and not get knocked out or whatever, which it's possible, but I'm gonna pick Moises. And moving on. The next fight we have a newcomer, Mateus Camilo, and then he's going against Gabe Green, which Gabe Green I believe is coming down to 155 from 170, if I'm not mistaken. And let's pull up our notes on these two gentlemen, see what we have. Camilo is a patient striker, can be a bit flat-footed. He has a solid left jab, a nice low kick. Tends to carry his hands a bit low. He has a powerful counter right. Seems to have solid power. So I say it's powerful, but again, some of these guys, especially newcomers, you look at the level of competition and some of these guys just fold over. So it's one of those things that it's hard to really know. It looks solid, but is it? We'll find out. We certainly will find out. But he does look like a plus athlete. He probably does carry pretty good power. He puts together good boxing combinations when he stuns his opponents, and he rips to the body. He goes to the body pretty well during those exchanges. So yeah, I mean, patient striker, can be a bit flat-footed. Nice left jab, nice straight punch, nice low kick. He carries his hands low, but we'll see. We're gonna see how good this guy is. I think that they're bringing him into the UFC for a reason, and he'll be facing Gabe Green. We'll leave it on him real quick so we can go through that in just a moment. But going against, like I said, Gabe Green. He's aggressive pressure striker, throws heavy punches, extending himself, has a good chin but can be buzzed. Yeah, I don't have a ton on this guy, but he does seem to be a pretty aggressive striker. Clearly, he looks like a powerful man. I think he is pretty powerful all in all, but not the most technical guy. And let's pull up Gabe Green real quick and see. Oh, tired. All right. Gabe Green did look pretty big at weigh-ins, maybe a little bit bigger in Camilo. Camilo looks pretty solid himself. Looks like he was in really good shape. He was knocked out against Brian Battle, man. He really rushed him hard, and yeah, he got knocked out on that one. Machado Garrett, Ian, I think he might have head kicked him, rocked him in that one, but he was able to fight through that adversity and make it to the final bell. You know, against a win against Phil Rose, pretty good. Honestly, Phil Rose not a terrible fighter. And going to a decision with Daniel Rodriguez is also pretty good. Has a submission win against Chris Padilla. That was in Bellator, but you know, Chris Padilla is now in the UFC and he's done pretty well for himself. So he's not a terrible fighter. I don't know. It's going to kind of come down to the game plan. You know, Mateus. He has been submitted twice. 3-1 in Fury. Some of these guys are, you know, what is that, XFN? I don't know what that is. Tough Enough. I've heard of that. I think one of those was like I don't know if it's like a Korean. I don't know. Might be a Korean promotion. Let's see what the odds on this fight are. Super windy. Slight favorite, Camilla is. Let's pull this up, see the size. Pretty big age difference, almost about 8 years. Yeah. It looks like, yeah, Gabe's a little bit bigger. It doesn't have Camilo's reach. Or Camilo's reach. But I think I've been saying Camilo this whole time. It doesn't have Camilo's reach. But, you know, they're only an inch apart in height. You know, I want to say Gabe's best chances probably. But he's got 6 submission wins. Four knockout wins, 3 losses. I don't know. I think Camilo probably wins it. He should probably be the favorite. I don't know. I just feel like Gabe really painted a bad picture for himself in his most recent fight. It was just kind of a bad look all in all. But I think he's shown in the past that he's probably a better fighter than that. So even though it looks awful, you know, he's not the worst fighter in the world. Coming down a weight class, which I believe is a weight he used to fight at. I think Canelo is just more primed right now. You know, Gabe's hasn't fought in a while. We're going to rock with Canelo. I think he wins this fight. I don't have a method for you guys. Minus 175 favorite. We're just going to take him. And we're going to move on to the next fight. Julian Erosa going against Melquizael Costa. They call him Milky, so we'll just call this guy Milky. It's so much easier. And this is a good fight. This is a fun fight. These guys were a little too friendly at the face-offs, but no, I like them both. I mean, I tend to kind of be a Costa fan. Rosa's he's a fun fighter to watch himself. But Milky, since coming in the UFC, he's definitely been one of those guys, kind of like I don't know if I want to compare him to Burns, but kind of like that same mold of just fighting regularly, and I really appreciate that. And he's proven to be pretty good. So let's pull up our notes one more time, and it won't be the last because we still have a few fights to get through. So we're going to pull up Erosa. Flat-footed pressure striker. He is aggressive, will stand in the pocket and trade. He's there to be hit. He digs to the body. Good knees in the clinch. Quick to the neck. Good submission game. But he can be clipped. Okay. And then on the other side we have Costa. So Costa is a light-footed striker, utilizes a heavy kicking attack at range. Decent jab. Average speed. His hand speed is nothing to behold or whatever. He does have pretty good power, and then he will string together combinations on opponents if they're hurt. He has submission upside, and he scrambles quite well. I do appreciate his scrambling ability. I've seen him get caught in chokes. I'm pretty sure he's been choked out, but we've seen him in chokes more recently, and he's been able to, scramble his way out of them. So he has shown the ability to get out of precarious situations. So let's pull them up. Clearly, Julian Erosa is not going to allow him to operate at range. He's not going to allow him to, strike in a comfortable environment for himself. Because, like I said, Costa tends to use a pretty kick-heavy attack. And I think that's going to factor into the fight. Oh well. Get out of here, you freaking goofies. Alright. That should be a fun fight. These are tough fights to pick, y'all. Super tough. Super tough. Sorry guys, I know I'm just looking at this. Let's see. I don't know. I think, honestly, I'm probably gonna lean. I think Erosa's probably got a pretty good chance of taking this, just because I feel like he has, just because of his aggressive style. Like I said, I don't feel that he's going to allow him to really operate at range, which is where he's going to operate best. And then truth be told is, Erosa's a pretty solid grappler. 14 submissions, never been submitted. Probably the better grappler, honestly. So I think that, you crowd the kicker, which you will, just because of his natural aggression, is going to take away some of Costa's best weapons on the feet. And then he's really left to do nothing but stand and bang. An environment that doesn't suit his skill set the best, or grapple with him, which is just a very dangerous place to be. Right, so I think that Julian Erosa is going to win this fight, but honestly, if you can get it like fight doesn't go, it's probably not the worst way to look at it. Let's see how many wins Erosa has by decision. I guess it has gone to decision for him like 9 times, but 12 knockouts, 14 submissions, 7 losses by knockout. And that's the thing, is because he's a bit chinny. You can feel, I think, pretty confident. It's probably not going to go to the cards. That's, in my opinion, the best way to look at it. But gun in my head right now, and I had to pick, I'm gonna take Erosa, even though I will be rooting for Costa. I do like Costa, so we're gonna move on. And I'm gonna plug my phone in because apparently it doesn't want to hold a charge. On to the next, ladies and gentlemen, our next fight. We have Nursultan Ruzaboyev going against Dustin Stoltzfus. Did I just say that? Nursultan Ruzaboyev. We'll get into the breakdown. I'm gonna tell you right now, Nursultan's moderate favorite. I'd assume he probably is. I was gonna say I definitely lean towards him, and for me, this is one of the easier fights to pick on the card. And so when we go over here, we're going to hop into Nurselton. He's a long, light-footed striker. He uses timing to explode into his opponents. I wrote this, and I understand it sounds absolutely awful. But it's what he does. Okay? So get your mind out of the gutter. He has a powerful straight right. And sometimes he'll throw this, and he'll grab his opponent's ankle with his left for a trip. He also has a nasty lead uppercut. I think he'll probably use this a little bit more if his opponent is, more of like a wrestling threat. Somebody that maybe looking to shoot a takedown or something like that. He does have some grappling and submission upside. He does. It's. I wouldn't call him like he's not like a great submission artist or whatever, but he has pretty good strength and leverage. Well, he's long armed, so I don't know if it's leverage necessarily, but he is able to get Kimuras from the bottom and different things like that. So he's just definitely a threat. I mean, he's a dangerous fighter all around, but I think with his height advantage and his ability to just kind of dart in, explode in, with relatively good power, fighting against a guy like Stoltzfus, it's looking like no good. Honestly, he should probably be a bigger favorite because I don't know that Stoltzfus is going to be able to stand with this guy. And whereas maybe I'm not even doing that right. We'll just do this. I have on him that he's a plodding striker, a bit flat-footed, has decent kicks at range. He's got a pretty nice front kick, uses a nice side kick, and he has a nice low kick. He tends to throw punches wide, most effective in the pocket, like in a brawl. And he has some takedown ability with offensive grappling, lacks defensive grappling, and he gives up his back. Doesn't take punches well. So I just think that this is Ruzaboyev by finish. Most likely knockout, but depending on what the line looks like, I would probably just take by finish because there is a world where he stuns him, they go to the ground, and Stoltzfus turns to, he gives up his back and gets choked out that way. You know what I mean? It's really going to be really tough to guarantee a knockout. I would lean knockout, but I think the safe way to look at it is it's just going to be by finish. Okay, that's the way I lean, and we're moving on. I'm not going to spend any more time on this fight because it's, like I said, to me, it's one of the easiest fights to pick on this card. This is another pretty good fight. We got Sodiq Yusuff going against Maron. I don't know if it's Maron or whatever, but the legend Santos. He fought on The Ultimate Fighter. Looks like a pretty good prospect all in all, but he's going against pretty good competition here. So we're going to pull up Yusuff. Sodiq is flat-footed pressure striker, primarily boxing. He does have good boxing. He uses a high guard and straight punches. He seems to have good power. He's willing to engage in wrestling and grappling sequences, which I don't see as a strong suit. Like I would, there's times where I've seen him hurt people and then he'll go to the ground with them and try to use ground and pound, which he does have relatively good ground and pound, all in all, but I think it can hurt his ability to finish the fight because there are times when he has his guys or his opponent hurt to the point where if he just kept the fight standing, he could probably finish it. And so to me, it's I don't know, a little bit low IQ in my opinion. But you know, I'm not the one in the cage. And I also noticed that, you know, in his longer fight, he did tend to slow in like halfway through the third round. So, you know, maybe he doesn't have the best conditioning. But I don't know that for sure. I do think he's a good fighter. He does have some occasional kicks and stuff too that he uses, but again, you know, he's primarily a boxer. And then he's going against Santos. Let's pull up Santos real quick. Flat-footed striker, uses a kick-heavy attack at range, heavy low kicks, and I think it's probably pretty common for a fighter when they throw a kick to kind of drop their hand. But his seems like exaggerated. It seems extremely bad that he really drops his hands low. He throws a lot into these kicks, and he pulls his hands all the way down, completely away from his face. And he's there to be countered. He looks to be a plus athlete. You know, good speed, good power. He has decent counters in the pocket. And I don't know what the heck just happened, so moving on. No, I'm just kidding. Decent counters in the pocket. Solid takedown defense, so like he sprawls pretty well. He's one of those guys where he kind of reminds me, and I don't know if it's like, it's not skill for skill or whatever, but he does remind me a bit of Anderson Silva. This guy's like all arms and legs. His torso's super tiny. Not that has a ton of relevance, you know, as far as, you know, his takedown defense or whatever, but it's just something that I noticed. All in all, I do think he's a pretty solid prospect, but I am going to have to favor Sodiq in this one. I think that Sodiq is going to be the more technical striker, and I think that, you know, if he stays in his face and just kind of crowds the kicker, I certainly think he can win this fight. But there's a couple of fights on this card that we're going to see, and I want to kind of just take note of this now, like a mental note. What's more important? You know, I know that a great kicker that has great footwork can definitely be the more effective striker at range. But when they lack that good footwork, their opponent is going to have to be willing to just stand in kicking range and eat kicks. And sometimes that happens. I understand that happens. But I think Sodiq is a good enough fighter to understand that he can't just stand at range with this guy. You know, Santos doesn't have phenomenal footwork. So I'm going to pick Sodiq to win this fight. And let's pull up there. He's a near even, and he's actually an underdog in this fight, which to me is kind of wild. You know, I guess he's been knocked out a couple times. Or, you know, he was hurt in the Barboza fight, but, you know, he also hurt Barboza. It was a miracle Barboza lived to see the second round. Diego Lopez, honestly, yeah, it's a quick knockout, but Diego's a pretty aggressive fighter, and he caught him with a mean uppercut. He's got pretty good power for the division. And, you know, it's like they say, styles make fights. And I think that, you know, he has a good enough boxing skill set paired with his aggression that, you know, he just caught him. But I don't see Santos having the same boxing skill set that Lopes has. And I think that the matchup, or the way these two guys match up, is that Santos is, like I said, a little bit more of a kicker, and his boxing's not as good. You know, it's not as good as Sodiq's, and he doesn't have the footwork to pair with the kicks. So I just see Sodiq winning this fight. I will say that Marion hasn't really shown any durability issues, so I'm not sure if Sodiq's going to be able to finish this fight or not. But honestly, you can just take Sodiq money line because he's the underdog. So moving on to the co-main event, we got Paul Bear Jew Craig going against Rodolfo the Traitor Bellotto. Alright. Paul Craig. Let's pull this man up. He's going back up to 205 for this fight. He's on a bit of a skid, and he's talking about his career is on the line here. His UFC career is on the line here. And it very well could be. But we'll find out, and we'll see how he responds to this opportunity. He's a light-footed striker. You know, his striking, I think, is quite a bit different than it used to be, but he is a light-footed striker. He has a solid side kick. It's actually pretty nice, but he tends to throw it naked, and he doesn't have great footwork. The other thing is, like, he literally, if I didn't know any better, I think this guy just freaking closes his eyes whenever he sees a punch coming at him, because he just gets fucking clobber knocked right in the face almost every time. It's unfortunate, you know what I mean? Because I think that's one, you know, an aspect of his game that he really needs to focus on is some kind of movement, whether it's just lateral movement with his feet or whether it's torso movement, head movement. I mean, you got to do something, my guy. You cannot just be taking punches like that, because it's one of his biggest downfalls. He does actually have some decent hands as well. You know, I see he has a nice straight left, and he's got some okay punches, but he doesn't really utilize them that much. And so because of that, he's just predominantly a kicker that throws punches here and there. He does have some pretty violent ground and pound. You know, if he gets a guy in the right spot, he will go kind of crazy to, you know, try to hurt his opponent. He'll pull guard, and he certainly has submission upside. You know, you don't really like to see people pull guard, but he works well off his back. You know, there's obviously pros and cons to that. You know, for him being the submission artist that he is, you know, I think that, you know, he's just trying to fight out of a position where he's comfortable, and he feels that, you know, he could secure a win. But, you know, it's never really great to be on your back with a 205. Well, and these guys weigh more than 205 pounds, but, you know, a big man that's freaking blasting you in the face. So, yeah, I don't know. I mean, he's won, like I said, he's won fights like this before, so I know that he can do it. It's just, you know, how much damage can he take and whatever. But we're gonna pull up Rodolfo. To me, this one's a pretty tough one as well. Rodolfo Bellotto is a light-footed striker. A little bounce in his step. He's not like great footwork, but, you know, he is light on his feet mostly. Not very technical, more of a brawler. He does have good power, and he seems to be pretty durable. Mostly, I've seen him rock, but I've seen him knocked out as well, but by Petrino. Petrino's a freaking specimen, you know what I mean? Yeah, he might not be the most technical striker, but that dude can hit. He likes to get his opponents down and use ground and pound or even try to submit them. And I believe that he's a pretty big favorite in this fight, and this scares me that this is one of his paths to victory is, you know, he almost always tries to get his opponent to the ground. And the other aspect of this is this guy really does believe in his jiu-jitsu. So, I'm not saying it's bad. I just know Paul Craig's got some pretty good jits on the ground. And I think that if he's going to be super willing to go to the ground with Craig, then it's going to open the door for Craig to, squeak out a win one way or another. And then you got Craig fighting for his career. That's what he thinks. So let's look at it's saying he's a, plus 340. Yeah, I mean, I would say the most likely thing is this just fight doesn't go. And I don't think there's not, a minus 500. There's really no value on Bellato at that price. And I think that ultimately it's going to play out to, he could certainly look like a minus 500 going against Craig, but it could also play out where it's super close and even Craig, gets a win. So I don't know that he's worth minus 500. I would lean definitely not, in my opinion. I think the value, if you're going to play an underdog, there's some value on Paul Craig. Yeah, not a guy you probably really want to trust a whole lot. But I think the more likely scenario in this is that this fight doesn't go the distance. The odds on that probably aren't very good either. But, if you're going to play it, that's probably the way you want to look at it. And we're going to move on to the Gilbert Burns and Michael Morales fight. Morales is a huge favorite. This is wild. A minus 650 favorite. Burns is a plus 475. Again, these numbers may not be super accurate. This is just what you have here on Tapology, and maybe they are. I'm not sure. I haven't even looked at this. This is raw. This is extremely raw that I'm just going through this. I have my notes, but like I said, don't really have any favorites, don't really have any early predictions or anything like that. We're just going through this and trying to break it down as we go. Gilbert Burns. I'm going to say also, Gilbert Burns is one of my favorite fighters. I really like him. I learned to love this guy during, the COVID and him fighting all the time when he really made a name for himself. And just seems like a pretty likable dude all in all. He's a fun fighter. And he's skilled, world-class jiu-jitsu. Let's pull it up. Let's pull up our boy Dorino. Burns. Burns, my brother. All right. Burns. All right. Patient, light-footed striker. He has good speed, solid 1-2. A good, pretty powerful sidekick. He throws a very powerful overhand right. Tends to enter the pocket with his hands low at times. So this is one of the big negatives that I seen on him when I was watching film on him. But he has good takedown and wrestling ability. And you pair that with his world-class BJJ. Burns is a legit contender. If you think about it, he fights nothing but killers. He's in his last 3 fights, he fought Bilal Muhammad, which he tore his shoulder or whatever in that fight, and he fought all the way through that fight. And honestly, didn't even look that bad doing it. And you could tell he just wasn't even using that arm. He still fought reasonably well. Fought the current champion and Jack Della Maddalena, and you could argue that he was 2 minutes away from winning that fight if he didn't duck his head and get freaking kneed in the face. But we're not going to sit here and talk about what ifs. I just want you all to be aware that he's still a legit contender even at 38 years old. Burns is no joke. And then he fought, this guy fights nothing but killers. Let's pull up his record. I want to see his most recent fight. I know he lost it. He's on a 3-fight skid, but all killers. Sean Brady. And Sean Brady, he kind of, when was that? September 2000. Who did Sean just fight? He just fought somebody and destroyed them. Who was it? Leon. Yeah, I feel like the Sean Brady. I mean, I think he definitely won that fight, but all in all, it was a good scrap. I think he was just the better controller of the grappling sequences and like the wrestling scenarios. He controlled the fight a little bit better, kept it where he wanted it. And they're both very, very high level grapplers. So props to Sean Brady. But yeah, let's move on. Let's go ahead and look up Michael Morales and see how these guys are going to match up. All right, so Michael Morales is a light-footed striker. He's rangy, so he is, he's got a reasonably big advantage height-wise and maybe even reach. I'm not sure what the reach is, but I would assume he's got a reach advantage. He has good boxing. He uses long, straight punches. He has solid footwork. The thing that I noticed about it, more so earlier in fights, it tends to fade a bit later in the fight. But he enters the pocket and he exits the pocket pretty well. So he doesn't just enter and stay there. No, he enters, throws, exits. He's not there to be hit. Now, as the fight goes on, he becomes a little bit more stationary as he fatigues, and he does tend to stay in the pocket a little bit longer. But he clearly has pretty good footwork. He has a snappy low kick. I don't have this in here, but it almost looked like he was like, obviously he has it and he uses it, but he also counters with it quite well. He just flicks it out there really quick. So he does have a snappy low kick. I think he's an unproven grappler, and I mean that in the sense that, at the UFC level, I know this guy's a credentialed he has a credentialed wrestling background. His takedown defense looks pretty solid. But, going against Gilbert Burns, I'm interested to see if Burns can take him down. And if he can take him down, what he can do. Or how Morales defends these sequences. So we're going to learn a little bit about him if Burns is able to implement the grappling. But, unfortunately, as much as I love Burns, I do think Morales is going to probably take this fight. I think because of his footwork and his striking ability, he is going to be able to win the minutes ultimately. But it's a tough fight. It's a good test for him. I'm going to pick Morales, but he is a big favorite, and I don't see a lot of value on that. I think that ultimately you just try to enjoy this fight. I'm going to definitely be rooting for my boy Burns. And because I think he's right there, Morales has a lot of time left in his career. He's a young guy, and maybe he is ready to fight the upper echelon of guys. Going against Burns, it's definitely moving in that direction. If he can defeat Burns, then yeah, he's right there. He's right there in the top 10, top 5. He'll probably be fighting up in there in no time. But I'd like to see Burns get maybe another crack at the title. I think that if he's healthy, he's good enough to probably win a title. But there's a lot of good guys in this division, a lot of killers. Jack Della Maddalena is the current champion, and he already lost to him. Like I said, probably pretty close to winning that fight if he didn't get knocked out, but doesn't matter. He did. So hats off to JDM. And I don't know. Like I said, I'm a lean Morales. That's kind of where I think the fight's going to go. But, it is a 5-round fight. And Morales, I don't know that he's ever actually been 5 rounds. Let's pull this up. I could take a nap. Let's see. Yeah, never been 5 rounds. So we're just gonna have to see, guys. You know, like I said, this fight's gonna be very telling for Morales, and Burns looks to be in good shape too. You know what I mean? I obviously this guy's in phenomenal shape himself, but Burns looks to be in better shape now than he was in recent past. So let's go, Burns. I know you can do it, my guy. Nonetheless, I'm gonna be rooting for you. Win, lose, draw, doesn't matter. You're the man. And let's rock and roll. I'll try to roll out something a little bit later, like favorite picks or something, and maybe even some like freaking hopes and dreams, freaking parlays, and we'll just rock and roll. All right. Best of luck to everyone. This Correlation Nation again. Peace out, guys.